There is a name that has been almost completely absent from this entire Daystar conversation. And I want you to think about that for a second because we've covered a lot of names on this channel.
Rachel Lamb Brown, the name nobody is talking about. Every major figure in the Daystar story has received sustained public attention. Joni Lamb's financial decisions, Doug Weiss's timeline, Jonathan Lamb's firing, Tom Calendurer's role, the anonymous board, the departed affiliates. All of it has been covered, analyzed, and examined by journalists, watchdog organizations, and commentary channels tracking this story. There is one name that keeps appearing in the background of every single thread in this story, and almost no one has stopped long enough to examine what her presence actually means. Her name is Rachel Lamb Brown. She is the eldest daughter of Marcus and Joni Lamb. She is the director of communications at Daystar Television Network. She was present at her mother's bedside when Joni died on May 7, 2026, and as of today, she is the last person carrying the Lamb name who holds any institutional position inside the organization her parents built from nothing in 1993. That is not a footnote to the Daystar story. In many ways, it is the story. What the Director of Communications actually does. The title Director of Communications inside a media organization of Daystar's scale, reaching more than 64 million American households, operating 39 television stations, generating approximately $120 million in annual revenue, is not an administrative support role. The Director of Communications is the person who determines what the institution says publicly, when it says it, and how it frames what it says. When a journalist submits an inquiry asking who is currently running Daystar, that inquiry is routed through communications. When a longtime donor calls the ministry wanting to know whether a new president has been named, the language used in that response is shaped by communications. When accountability journalists from independent outlets apply external pressure to the organization, the institution's public posture, what it acknowledges, what it deflects, what it ignores, is managed by the communications function. Rachel Lamb Brown is that function. She is not peripheral to what Daystar says in this moment. She is the voice of Daystar in this moment, and she has been in that role throughout the most consequential period in the organization's history. She was Director of Communications when Jonathan and Susie Lamb's allegations became public in November 2024. She was Director of Communications when 18 affiliated ministries departed the network. She was Director of Communications when investigative reports documented the financial questions surrounding the honeymoon expenses, the private jet usage, and the real estate portfolio. She was Director of Communications when Joni released her lengthy video characterizing Jonathan's account as fabricated. She was Director of Communications when Daystar's own spokesman failed to respond to a journalist's request for the names of the leadership team the organization claimed was in place. She was Director of Communications when her mother died, and she remains Director of Communications now, in a post where the organization has still not named a chief executive, still not disclosed its board, and still not provided donors with a coherent public accounting of what is happening inside the institution. What Rachel's position in the family conflict means institutionally. During the years of the Lamb family's public fracture, Rachel was not on Jonathan's side of the divide. She remained connected to the Daystar operation and aligned with her mother throughout the conflict. When Jonathan and Susie went public with their allegations, the abuse claim involving their daughter, the accusation of a cover-up, the spiritual abuse charges, the financial misconduct concerns, Rachel did not step back. She stayed. She held her role. She remained aligned with the institution and its leadership. According to reporting from multiple sources, Rachel was present in the Bedford, Texas home when Joni died on May 7th. Jonathan was nearby, geographically close, but was not notified that his mother's condition had become critical. He learned of her death from Daystar's corporate attorney, approximately 10 minutes before the organization posted an announcement on its social media platforms. Rachel was in that house, Jonathan was down the road, and the call that would have given him the chance to say goodbye was never made. What that means morally is between the individuals involved and whatever accountability they each face. What it means structurally is precise. The only person with the Lamb name who currently holds institutional power inside Daystar is someone who is positioned against the individual who credible reporting suggests Joni herself, in her final weeks, reportedly wanted to restore to the organization. Joshua Brown and the Nashville Question. Rachel's husband, Joshua Brown, served as Daystar's Director of Business Development. His background includes a career in Christian music connected to the international worship music scene, and he and Rachel built their professional lives inside the Daystar orbit, appearing on air and representing the family's next generation of ministry involvement. As of June 2026, Joshua Brown is no longer based in Texas. According to source reporting, he has relocated to Nashville, Tennessee. He remains listed in Daystar's organizational structure as Director of Business Development, but is reportedly living and operating from a different state. The significance of that geographic detail is worth sitting with carefully. Business development at a ministry of Daystar's scale is not a role that functions effectively from a distance. It involves donor relationships, programming partnerships, and the ongoing financial architecture that sustains the organization's operations. It requires presence in the rooms where decisions are being made, at the table when the board is meeting, in the relationships that have to be maintained in real time. When the person holding that title is in Nashville while an institutional crisis of this magnitude is unfolding in Bedford, Texas, that distance carries meaning. People who are genuinely invested in an institution's future tend to be physically present in its operations during a crisis, not operating from another state. The question of what Joshua Brown's relocation signals about his assessment of where Daystar is heading is a question the available facts raise and do not yet answer. The financial picture donors cannot see. Internal salary documents obtained and published by independent journalists placed Rachel Lamb Brown's annual compensation at $190,000 as of 2022. Joshua Brown's compensation as Director of Business Development was listed at $100,000 for the same period. These are figures from 2022, and current compensation cannot be independently verified. The reason it cannot be independently verified is structural and deliberate. Daystar operates under a church exemption that relieves it of the obligation to file a Form 990 with the IRS, the public disclosure document that allows donors, journalists, and accountability organizations to examine what nonprofit organizations pay their executives, where their revenues come from, and how their money is spent. Most charitable organizations of comparable size are required to make these disclosures. Daystar is not, because it has structured itself as a church. This means that the individuals currently donating to Daystar, many of them elderly viewers on fixed incomes who have given to this ministry for decades, have no independent mechanism for verifying what the organization currently pays its leadership, how its financial decisions are being made, or whether its stewardship practices align with the mission they believe they are funding. They are operating entirely on trust, and trust without any mechanism for verification is, by its nature, fragile. The succession question nobody has answered. When Joni died, the Daystar board released a statement describing a leadership team already in place that would ensure the ministry continued without interruption. No names were attached to that statement. Not one member of the leadership team was identified publicly. A spokesperson subsequently did not respond when asked by a journalist to provide the names of the people who constituted that team. A leadership team that cannot be named is not a functioning accountability structure. It is institutional language used to project stability, while the actual decisions about the organization's future are made in a room no one outside Daystar can see into. Independent watchdog researchers who have tracked Daystar's finances and governance have identified three plausible paths for the succession: elevating a Lamb family member, with Rachel as the most likely candidate, promoting an existing executive such as the organization's chief financial officer, or conducting an external search for a leader with no Lamb family connection. 2 months after Joni's death, none of these paths has been publicly confirmed. If Rachel Lamb Brown is named as Daystar's next president or chief executive, she would become the third consecutive Lamb to hold the organization's top position. That outcome raises immediate and legitimate questions about whether the board intends to perpetuate a family dynasty inside an institution whose accountability crisis was substantially produced by the dynamics of that same family's concentrated control. If the CFO is elevated, an experienced financial executive with no public broadcasting profile would be stepping into the most visible leadership role in American Christian media. If an external search is conducted, it would represent the most significant departure from Daystar's founding culture in its 33-year history. Each of those outcomes tells the watching community something important about what the board actually believes, about where the organization has been, about what produced its crisis, and about what kind of institution it intends to be going forward. The board's continued silence tells the watching community something too.
She was complicated, she was human, and she was Rachel's mother. That grief is real. Rachel was present when her mother died. She was in that house in Bedford, Texas on May 7th. Whatever the history of the conflict with Jonathan, whatever the choices that were made during those years of dispute, she lost her mother.
The human dimension. None of what Rachel Lamb Brown's institutional position requires to be examined erases the fact that she is a daughter who lost her mother this year. Joni Lamb died at 65 years old. She was, by every account, a formidable and complex woman, someone who had survived the public exposure of her late husband's extramarital relationship, who had continued leading a global broadcasting organization through years of family conflict and institutional controversy, who had poured decades of her life into a mission she believed in. She was Rachel's mother. That grief is real and it is current. Rachel was present when her mother died. She has been carrying that loss in public, in a demanding institutional role, under a level of scrutiny that most people never face under any circumstances, let alone while grieving. That is genuinely hard. And accountability journalism that loses sight of the humanity of the people it examines stops being journalism and becomes something else. The mature posture is to hold both things simultaneously, to pray for Rachel as a daughter in grief, and to ask the questions that her institutional role demands be asked as honestly and carefully as they deserve. These are not competing obligations. They are complementary ones. What the body of Christ deserves to know. Marcus and Joni Lamb built something genuinely significant. Daystar Television Network reached communities across the world with programming that changed lives. People in crisis who found something to hold on to when they had nothing else. Viewers who encountered the gospel through a screen in a living room at 6 in the morning when no one else was speaking to them. That legacy is real. It is not erased by the accountability failures that surrounded the organization's governance. The questions this story raises are not an attack on that legacy. They are a defense of it. The most serious threat to what the Lambs built is not external scrutiny. It is internal opacity, the willingness to operate an institution at this scale with this level of donor trust while refusing the transparency that trust requires. The people who have given to Daystar for 20 and 30 years, who have prayed for its leadership and believed in its mission, deserve to know who is running the organization they fund. They deserve to know whether a succession plan exists and what it says. They deserve to know why the leadership team referenced in the May 7th statement has never been identified publicly. They deserve to know what the organization intends to do about the accountability questions that have been documented in public records, court filings, and verified investigative reports over the past 2 years. Rachel Lamb Brown holds the communications role at the exact moment when those questions are most urgent. She has the institutional capacity to address them. Whether she chooses to do so, whether the organization she represents moves toward the transparency its donor base deserves or continues managing information from behind a wall of institutional silence, is a choice that will define what kind of organization Daystar becomes in whatever chapter comes next. The donors are watching, the accountability community is watching, and the millions of people who believed in the mission Marcus and Joni Lamb gave their lives to build are watching, hoping for something that looks more like the ministry they trusted than what the current silence suggests. Please like and share the video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. God bless you. God loves you. God smiles when He sees you. Thank you for watching The Celebrity Vault.